All right, good afternoon and welcome to webinar number 1 of term 3, which is Better Balance. I'll just be entering people in as I go. So if I pause for a minute, that's people coming in. So this is going to be recorded for later. So you can watch this as many times as you need. But we're trying to keep it simple and practical. So the idea of these the idea behind these webinars is to help you to understand what are the practical tips behind balance, mobility, and strength. There's the 3 big pillars that we're working on in Standing Strong. So just to go over that again, so like when we're talking about fitness within like over 65s, we're not talking about breaking Olympic records. So if you are up to that, good for you, for them. But we're talking about making lifestyle comfortable and accessible and feeling, as low levels of pain and high levels of well-being as possible. So a lot of that comes down to joint mobility. So that's one of the pillars. So that means the ability to overcome stiffness. So if you're over 65, most people feel a little bit stiff in the joints in the morning. If you have a rheumatic condition, that can be much worse. So mobility can be a really key. So mobility is not so much in this context just walking around, though of course that's important. We're talking about the ability of your joints to move freely and without pain. And you can do certain types of exercise for mobility to try and enhance that and maintain that. Or even stop it from deteriorating in some circumstances. So we'll have an in-service on that as well. Strength is the other one of the big 3. So strength, as you can understand, is the ability to move, carry, withhold, withstand certain loads. Now, in day-to-day life, I'm just going to let someone else in. Okay, in day-to-day life, that's going to look like, carrying shopping, moving stuff around the house and kitchen, walking with backpacks, this sort of stuff. So we want to be able to have those loads not lead to pain. Okay, so if you don't have enough strength, just say you're going walking and you're going backpacking. Sorry, I'm just going to stop this. Just say you're going walking, for instance, and you've got a heavy load like a backpack, and your muscles aren't strong enough to withhold that. What will happen is it'll sink down, and you'll strain into the soft tissues and ligaments and this sort of stuff, which aren't designed to take the loads long term like that, and you'll end up getting pain. So what you want to do is be able to have enough strength to withhold that, enough reserve so that you can actually go about your day. The other thing is obviously strong muscles, strong bones, all that sort of stuff is going to improve bone density. So can be can stave off things like osteopenia, osteoporosis, which is also good. In the event of a fall, it means that you're less likely to fracture something, which is great. So strength is about all of that. I find with our people that we're looking at, strength is probably going to be the difference between doing a lot of leisure activities or even chores around the house. So even things like gardening, when people's strength goes down, often they can't move, bags of fertilizer, they can't dig things, they can't do that sort of stuff. So that's going to be around strength. But today, as probably the first big pillar is balance. So most people in Standing Strong have identified a balance as their main goal. So I would say at least 80%, maybe 90% of people have balance as a primary goal. So we'll start here. Now, balance is obviously the ability to keep upright and avoid a fall, but it applies in more than just, say, standing. So for instance, if you're kneeling down, say in the garden, or if you're putting something in the bottom shelf, and you can't balance in that position, you tend to tip over. That's a part of balance as well. And a lot of people don't have sitting balance or kneeling balance. So that's all part of balance. It's not just when you're standing on 2 feet or walking, that is, but it's a broad term, meaning that you've got to be able to keep upright in the gravitational plane and control of that at all times. And so when you're looking at making goals around this, it's obviously to prevent falls and to increase confidence, but you want to really have command of your body in all the activities that you're trying to do. So have a think about, are there things that you're avoiding doing because of a fear of falls or a concern around balance? So some people will tell me they no longer walk around the block because in the Blue Mountains, in a lot of places, in most places, there's slopes, there's cambers on roads, there's little ledges and steps and things like that, and they don't feel confident to navigate those areas. And so often it's a balance deficit that does this. I'm sorry, I'm just letting people in. Often it's a balance deficit that will do that. Okay. Now, when it comes to balance, we have really, really strong data and research. We just know that we know this, that if you want to decrease your falls risk, do balance exercise and do it at a high intensity and do it lots. That's pretty much, and do it long term. And that's pretty much what the big picture message of what we're trying to get today is. Don't be thinking that you can just do a little bit of balance exercise and then that be that. It's kind of like brushing your teeth. You don't just brush your teeth once and hope for the best for the rest of your life, or you don't do it for 3 months and think this will be good. You just do it little and often. So try and see balance as not something that you just attain in an episode, but think of it as a lifestyle of maintaining the very thing that helps you to do what you need to do. That'd be my first encouragement. So in terms of the recommendations at a specific level for over 65s, is we say if you can get a dose of up to 2 hours a week of balance, that's going to be really wonderful. Now, that works out to be, say, 20 minutes a day over about 6 days. So that's a lot of work, right? But the people who've done that and have continued for at least a minimum of 6 months and then ongoing, have done really nicely in a lot of the trials. Now, that doesn't mean that you will not, that doesn't mean that you won't improve if, say, you do less than 2 hours a week, right? It's just that that's probably going to be, the more, there's a dose response relationship. So the more you do, the better you'll be. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, what constitutes a balance exercise, and really anything that challenges your base of support, anything that challenges your ability to step and move and reach and lean and stay upright is going to constitute a balance exercise. So one way you can, well, there's 3 main ways to increase the intensity of your balance exercise. One is to not use hands to support. One is to narrow your base of support, which means that rather than standing wide on 2 feet, you're standing narrower and narrower and narrower. And the last one would be, your pelvis or the center of mass is moving around to the limits of your tolerance. So if you then interact those 3 variables with tasks such as steps and slopes, and different obstacles and reaching and picking up things, pretty much you can create any exercise that your mind can creatively come up with that will challenge you. And so don't be limited into thinking that balance is just standing on one leg. Balance is anything that challenges your ability to move and stay upright. So that's the things that when you're staying still versus things when you're moving around versus even, people who are running and doing all this sort of stuff. So that's going to look different for everyone in our classes, depending on your mobility level. Some people are running, some people find it hard to get out of the chair. So there's a wide range of mobility depending on your age and ability and everything else. But you want to get to a point where you are really challenging it well. So what I wanted to go over today is a little way, and I'll make this available for you with a link at the end. But Mel Farley is a researcher that did this infographic sheet. She did a PhD on this, I believe, about balance intensity. And so just doing a little bit of intensity, as in like if it's really easy to maintain your balance, you won't get a lot of improvements that way. You have to actually go to the point where you're really concentrating and working hard to maintain your balance. That's the level you need to be at over that 20 minutes a day kind of thing to really make great improvements. So it is a real big investment I acknowledge that, but that's just the way it is. So I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to show you this. This sheet. So Monash University did this, and it's called the Balance Intensity Scale. Now, this is a little printout that you guys can have and use. It's actually quite straightforward, and that's the whole idea, is that you don't want to be thinking too hard. But if we go through this, is how hard are your balance exercises? And so I'll just run through it. So balance exercise training is especially important as people age to maintain independence and reduce the risk of falls. Current recommendations for adults over the age of 65 is to participate in at least 2 hours a week of balance exercises at a moderate to high level of balance challenge, what we call balance exercise intensity. So then you go, well, how do you then work this out? So this helps to individualize that. So for instance, for me, if I was standing on one leg, because I'm younger and I've done a lot of that, that's probably not going to be a high level of challenge for me. But if you've started your balance, or if you've had a fall or broken something, that could be a very high level. So it's not the exercise you're doing that dictates the intensity, it's how you feel about it. Okay, so this can change. Your balance intensity can change as you improve. That's why you always want to be progressing your exercises so that you are at that current level of challenge. And that's where you can talk to me in class or Simon in class about, well, how do we do this to improve when I'm getting to the point of, this is really easy, okay? Because you don't want to be stagnant with this. So I'll just go through this. So what you might notice if you're exercising at a higher balance training intensity. So before you start, as in like, just say, let's just use a tandem stance. So say we asked you to do a heel toe stand, right? That was the exercise. Now, if it's a high intensity exercise for you, what you'll notice is that these are the things you'll do before you start exercising. You'll pause or hesitate before starting the exercise, because you won't go straight into it. Okay, because you start to think, oh, how am I going to get this? It'll take a bit of time. So that's one indication that that's going to be a high intensity exercise for you. The next one that might happen is that maybe you need help to get into the position to start the exercise. So if you need help from someone else, that's definitely going to be high. You might need to hold on to something to get into the position to start the exercise, like a bench or a chair, or you might need more than one attempt to get into the position to start your exercise. So they're the kind of things that will happen for you that will show you that it's a high intensity exercise. Now, if you're exercising at home and you don't have someone to help you, obviously we don't want to put you at risk, right? So you might want to make sure that you can always self-recover, but you'll notice that you actually have to think about it. You might need to hold on to something, and it might need a couple of goes, right? And they're the things that you're wanting to look for in yourself to make sure that it's a high intensity exercise. So for instance, if I was taking myself doing a tandem stance, that's actually quite easy for me. I wouldn't need a help from someone. I won't need to hold on. I won't need one more attempt, and I wouldn't pause before I start. I'll just go straight into it, okay? So for me, I know straight away that that's not going to be high enough to improve my balance, okay? So that's the before you start. Now, when you're actually in the exercise, there are about 6 other things that you can find out to know if you're at that intensity. So for instance, the first one is your breathing might change. Now you might notice, and I notice this as an instructor, is people will hold their breath because you're sort of concentrating, trying to lock everything down, and you will hold your breath. Or maybe you will breathe harder or faster, but generally you won't keep it at the same rate. So you'll notice maybe that will happen. You might need to have some steps to recovery. So for instance, if I was doing again, let's go back to this tandem stance thing, heel toe. If I wasn't so wonderful with my balance and I found that hard, I might go into that position and then kind of lose my balance and step a few times to regain it and then come back. So if I'm stepping actively to get out of the exercise, I know that I'm exercising at a high intensity. The other thing would be is you need to move your arms or grab and hold something to keep your balance during the exercise. So if If you know you have to hold on to that wall or the bench or the chair to actually keep going, you know that's a high intensity exercise. Just going down one, someone else needed to help you. So again, if you're training with someone else or you're training with one-on-one with a physio or a trainer, and you need them, same thing. You'll also feel unsteady during the exercise. So this is one of the difficult things, is to make you work at a higher intensity, you're going to actually feel unstable. And this is where the rubber meets the road with improvement, which is really hard for people because they go, well, how can I exercise at home and feel unstable? Might I fall? And I guess that the answer is yes for that. And we don't want you to fall, but we want you to improve to your balance so that you don't fall in the future. So it's kind of like a bit of a hold this intention. So what I say to people is you want to have that level of unsteadiness, which is really quite challenging, but you can also self-recover, right? So for people who are exercising at home by themselves, you want to be able to recover your standing balance from any position you find yourself in, otherwise it's too hard. So for instance, if you were working on your single leg standing and you weren't so good at that, and you knew that every time you did that, you would actually, I don't even feel comfortable to put my foot down and stand up again, that would be way too hard, okay? But if you were doing it next to a bench and you knew that if you lost your balance, you can hold onto the bench and step safely to the side, that would be fine. So that's the thing that you want to test first with this one. So you want to take it to the highest level of unsteadiness you can do, but without tipping over into not being able to self-recover, if that makes sense. And that takes a bit of practice, okay? And sometimes we need to do that with you to start with, or you need a coach just to help you out with that process until you feel comfortable. Now, the other thing that you'll notice is you'll feel more tense, like you'll feel like you're locking everything up and keeping it rigid. And that's the body's attempt to control excess movement. But if you're doing that, you know that that's another sign of a high intensity exercise. So again, just to recap, there's 10 different things that are pretty universal with everyone that happens when an exercise is at a higher intensity. So there's the things that happen before you start, and there's things that happen as you exercise. So you want to feel that you are ticking off at least some of these things when you're doing high intensity balance. If you're ticking off none of those things, that balance exercise will not help you to increase balance. Okay, so I don't want you to waste your time doing things that don't help you, but this is critical that you understand this. And if there's one thing that people don't understand generally about balance, it's probably this. And so we spend a lot of time on this because I don't know that we've done a great job in our profession over the last maybe 10, 15 years. I think it's improving with this stuff because this is sort of a little bit more recent. But I think a lot of people think that providing you can stand on one leg or do a tandem stance, you just keep going with that and that be that. But we really need to progress it, and that's how we do it. All right, so they're the things that you notice, but then an easier way to do this, and this is what we've been doing this in class, is how you can rate the intensity of your balance exercises. So use this scale below to rate the difficulty of your balance exercises. You choose the number that matches how hard you worked to keep your balance during exercise. So it's just a rating scale of the amount of effort. So you just really, every exercise you're doing that's improving your balance, you're asking yourself this same question: how hard did you have to work to keep your balance during this task? So, and it's only out of 5. So 5 being maximal effort, 1 being nothing at all. So I'll go back to that for me, right? Tandem stance. That's no effort at all for me. So that's 1. All right. If I stand on one leg, I have to think about it a little bit, but that's probably a 2 for me. If I stand on one leg and then have to reach to my foot and pick something up, that's probably about a 4. All right. And I'd have to do some other stuff to get me up to there. So I want you to think about the different exercises that you've done for balance, whether it's feet together, feet in front, reaching, stepping on the balance mat, whatever you like, and get used to scoring these each time. And you want to have them up probably at least 4, but you want to have them at 5 if you can, all right? You want them to be up this end of the spectrum. And that way you will notice improvements. We've had a few people that over the years of exercise with us, they've said, "Oh, I feel like I've done a lot of work, but I haven't improved much." Now, there's two probably main reasons for that. One is we're all getting older. So if you compare your current self with your 4 or 5 year old self, for those people who've been with us for that long, and you're exactly the same, I say that's a net improvement because the aging curve does go down slightly with balance. So if you're staying the same, you haven't gone down, and therefore you've actually have a net improvement. So that's great. Now, we want you to improve if possible, and that's possible in the majority of cases I've found, at least a little bit, is this stuff. So if you can actually look at, well, how much are you doing? Are you doing up to your 20 minutes a day? And are you doing at a high intensity? And start scoring that, and then try it again. So do this over like 6 months and just see if that really starts to help you. Enlist some help, like come and ask us if there's ways you can improve it. Come and ask us, what about if I do this, do this, do this? I tell you what, you won't regret. You won't regret doing this because it just makes such a difference. It's such a it's evidence-based in the sense of I've never seen people do this consistently well and not have an improvement. Like, I just don't see that. I see people work hard and not improve, but I don't see people work at this maximal effort of balance and not improve. And it's just about trying to get here. See, sometimes to get here, it's actually quite challenging because it takes a little bit of confidence and you work up to that, but that's what I'd be recommending to do. So again, don't push through fear and just go, right, I'm just going to do this and put myself in an unsafe zone. I'm not asking you to do that, but I'm asking you to try and slowly improve up the scale so that you still feel in control, but you have to really concentrate. And that's the way to do it. Okay, so I'll make this available. I would print this out, chuck it on your fridge, and just have a look at it, and until this becomes second knowledge. Like you just really feel like I know when I'm exercising, I'm bracing, I'm breathing hard, I'm having to hold on, I have to step to safety, I have to think about getting into position, all these types of things. I might need to attempt it one or more times. They're the kind of things that you're looking for. And it makes, the beautiful thing about this is it's all fairly common sense, right? That shouldn't take anyone by surprise. You're like, well, that is what happens. But it is harder to rate the intensity of a balance exercise than, say, a strength exercise where we have like weights. So, you could say, well, you're doing this weight now, so therefore it's higher. Or you're doing this many reps and sets, therefore it's higher. Whereas balance is a bit different because you could be doing the same exercise as someone else, but not be working as hard. And so it's a bit more subjective in terms of rating that effort. Okay. Now, just the last thing before we go into the some interaction and question time is, all right, how do I then integrate this 20 minutes or so into my day? And I don't want to get hung up on this 20 minutes as in, it has to be 20 minutes or else. It's just that more is better. And if you're getting up to there, you're going to go really well. So I like the idea of integrating it into your lifestyle so you don't have to do another session, if that makes sense. So one way you could do it is every time you walk down your hallway, for instance, you could do some sort of tandem walk or some sort of walk that challenges your balance because you're walking up there anyway. You're doing it. You might find that while you're in the kitchen or while you're waiting for the kettle to boil, you probably heard this before, you're doing another thing. You might find that when you get to the steps in your house, you're doing some stepping practice, and again, you don't have to do a lot, but it all adds up. And remember to, when you're in class, we're doing 45 minutes of exercises and there's a lot of balance scattered through there. So that's the other thing. Sometimes exercises work on your strength and balance at the same time. So like a step up and over, you're working on your strength, but you're working on your balance. So that's all going to go towards this 2 hours a week. So for instance, if you've done a 45-minute class, there's probably at least half an hour of balance in that. And there's a quarter already. And if you're doing another maybe 15 minutes just interspersed through your day-to-day activities, well, there's another probably hour or so a week. So you only really have to look at another half an hour routine a week and you've got it, right? And so if you think about it that way, it becomes a little bit more manageable. But it's so much better to try and work it into your lifestyle rather than trying to just you know, go hard, do everything at once, just try and chip away at it. And then you'll maintain it and you don't have to work so hard because you've formed a habit. So that's probably what I'd suggest. So some people, for instance, at home will buy their balance mats. They'll buy those blue mats, and we can certainly help find them for you and show them where you are. Some people use cushions at home to have an unstable surface. We do stepping exercises with mats. We can do reaching stuff. We can do obstacle courses, all that sort of stuff. So anytime you change direction, change level, change height, change how far you reach, all that sort of stuff, it's gonna challenge this. Okay, so I want you to think of balance a little bit more holistically in terms of any body control that you need, which challenges your ability to stay upright, is going to work on your balance. Okay, so if you're doing a lunge exercise, which is a strength exercise, and changing your height from up to low, and you're trying to balance from side to side, that's going to have an effect on your balance as well. It's just going to do your strength at the same time, and that's the beautiful thing, is when you can start pairing these up, that's going to be good. Now, for those of you with low bone density, such as osteopenia, osteoporosis, this balance is a highly recommended thing, because if you don't fall, you're unlikely to fracture, right? So you might have lower bone density, but if you don't fall in the first place, then you might not fracture something, which can lead to a lot of problems, as you all know. So we'll leave it there in terms of the kind of things that we can do for balance. I want you just to leave you with the takeaway knowledge that you're going to try and increase the amount that you do and increase the intensity, but use this chart and get familiar with it. It's really quite simple, and try and work towards that kind of like 4 or 5 out of 5 with the majority of the exercises. And I can almost guarantee that if you do that for long enough, you'll see something change. Okay. Your confidence might change. Is it hard? Yep, it is hard. But it's all worth it. Very good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the recording, and we'll go into the interaction.